Hi,
Hello,
Chris.
good night.
Good night. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Very good. It's a lovely Wednesday. How's the weather there
Yes.
in Brazil for you guys?
Oh, rainy in B8, BAO, BHO 2, the new site of Belo Horizonte.
Oh, it's always raining. It was beautiful here in the States. As friends are listening, we had cold fronts, but today it was just a lovely, lovely day.
Ah, so nice.
So nice. All right, dear friends. So, welcome to Cardiac Radio, where we're here to nourish our souls. I am Nora, and this is,
Chris,
and we're here to get tonight. João will not be able to make it this evening, only in spirit. So he's there in heart and spirit. So we thank our brother so much, right, for his lovely presence. All right. So we're gonna continue our book, which is the Missionaries of the Light. But before we begin, let's say a quick prayer. Let us close our eyes and take a deep breath. Dear Mother, Father, God, thank you so much for this beautiful evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. Thank you for our brother Jean, for Chris, myself, for Cardiac Radio, for all the spirits and anyone who is joining us tonight. We ask for enlightenment, for clarity, and for drops of beautiful messages that we can take with us this evening and pass them on. That we're going to say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. And so be it. With that, we ask permission to begin. All right. Amen.
yes, your voice is a meditation.
Oh, thank you, my dear. We want to say, um, we're resonating our energies, all of us, and we have two amazing friends here, Leonie and Marisa, and we want to say thank you so much for joining us. So, Chris, I'm ready when you're ready.
What?
I'm ready when you're ready.
You read the chapters.
We can split it. So, Joan was supposed to do chapter 6, but we're going to be all collaborating to this evening. Oh, thank you, Marisa. Thank you. Thank you. So, chapter 6 is titled Prayer. And Andre's talking, obviously, the whole message is about the power of prayer. And I know that there are different ways to pray, right? We have the very traditional religious prayers, right, where we have the people kneel on their knees and they hold their hands. Some people like to light candles, have a more of a ritual thing. So there are many different kinds of prayers, but it's really that connection that we have one on one, right? And in this chapter, Andre shares a beautiful, beautiful scene of a prayer. So unique, so different. The first time I read this, I had to stop because it was just so beautiful. Something I would have never thought about. So, um, any comments before Chris?
No, go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So, um, they use this word psychic microbiology, and I think last time we ended up in that because we were talking about vampirism, right? And we saw this. We had like a spiritist microbiology course because bacteria are everywhere, and so in this chapter, he kind of says, "Okay, guys, in order for us when we pray, that's like the bottom message is when we pray that those little spiritual bacteria, they're clearing out of the way, right? So these are not the kind that we like. And so the connection here too is because Andre was a doctor, and so he's making those connections, like thinking, well, I remember like with the body, like when somebody had eczema, I would um recommend that they take starch baths, and bismuth creams arsenic and sulfur based medicines, right? So he's using again his earthly knowledge to kind of see, hey, this is also happening on the other end. And they're explaining to him about the the medicine really on that plane is that spiritual component, is that prayer to get rid of those parasites, right? And then Andre's asking, well, could those microbial manifestations follow discarnates? Like if we are sick here on the zones, does it kind of follow us? And the answer is yes, but not in the sense I think like, well, when Andre disincarnated, he did continue right with his issues, right? If you've seen the movie, that's a great example. If you're very visual like myself, right, in the movie you got to see how everything, all his abdominal area, his stomach area and all that area, his gallbladder and everything was still um, affected by that. So we do know it continues on, but he's saying that there's also vampirism. So this is saying it's like it stays within the soul. So there's a lot of things that go on with us. And he says the medical field is much larger after the death of the body. So it's a little bit more complex, right? But what in essence really comes down to is to our moral qualities, right? So as we're working on our moral qualities, as we're working on all of that, all of a sudden we start to see um, health medicine in a very different eyes. And I think that's what it is. That's why I say like for him to title this prayer and to incorporate all of this medical components, it is very contemporary because I know Dr. Vanessa Anzaloni has every Saturday, she has programs where she brings in scientists and they talk about already the earthly science that goes with the medicine and how things connect. And it's so beautiful that Andre is talking, oh, it continues, right? So it's like we're already ahead of the game with this knowledge. um, so then he gives a beautiful, beautiful example. Um, and they follow Cecilia. All right. So Cecilia is she's a good sister, very devotional. And they were asleep, and then the husband uh, was not as high as her, I believe, and so he kind of calls her in that vibration because she was already asleep. She's up, so she's like, I gotta go. So she goes and attends him. And I'm gonna read what it said because it's absolutely beautiful. It is so empowering. It's like romantic, it is spiritual, it is healing. And I was just wow. It says that she goes um, at the head of the bed, and at the same time, the young man who seemed to be fixing his pillow laid his head on her spirit lap. While stroking his hair, Cecilia lifted her eyes to the Most High in fervent prayer. Sublime light surrounded her completely, and I could tune in to her innermost thoughts as I listened to her request for enlightenment for her partner, who seemed to love without bounds. Moved by the beauty of her pleas, I was surprised to see that her heart had become a blazing focal point of light from which countless shining particles were emitted, projecting onto her husband's body and soul with the swiftness of tiny rays. The radiant particles entered his body in every direction, especially the sexual area, where I had seen such great psychic anomalies. The particles concentrated en masse there, destroying the tiny, horrible dark forms of the devouring vampirism. But the deadly elements did not remain inactive, right? They fought desperately with the agents of light. As if he had reached an oasis, the young man lost his expression of anguished fatigue. He seemed calmer and gradually stronger and happier as time progressed. With this essential energies restored, he slowly embraced his loving wife as she remained maternally at his side, and he joyfully fell asleep. Like that, right there,
Wow.
that's a love story.
There is angel among us.
Oh my gosh.
That's That's the really true.
It is. It is. I mean,
It's
to love,
unbelievable.
to love is
That's
that, right?
yes, so lovely.
But it's like in a love in the form of a prayer. That's the thing. She was in that essence, in that envelope, that it's beautiful to think, especially we're in relationships, in our part, you
Yeah.
know, that we have sometimes, and what's beautiful, it's all behind the scenes, right? This is all happening at night, and yet she was integral to this. And imagine us if we continue praying, if we keep these vibrations, the impact that we can have onto others, and this love that's so sublime that Andre reminds us of, you know, um, is beyond. And I don't know if I'm like, I don't know. I think I will see love a lot different in prayer in this.
So
And
beautiful.
it is just beautiful. And he constantly talks about the light and the prayer. And he says an elevated prayer is a source of creative and vivifying magnetism. And anybody who cultivates prayer with the proper balance of sentiment gradually becomes a radiating focal point of divine energies. That's it. When we think about it, it was not about sitting down, it's not about kneeling, sacrificing, beating ourselves up. It really wasn't. It's just to be in that light, the vibration, to keep practicing. And it was absolutely beautiful.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi,
So sorry,
Joan.
I just wanted to say that I got stuck at work today, but I managed here to I don't know if my audio is even listenable. Can you guys listen what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi,
I
brother.
managed to open the book here, and I just wanted to finish this part. I'm reading a very, very impressive teaching that the book brings for us. And Alexandre, he has these wonderful teachings, and I want to transcribe one here before we finish this chapter. He says this: have no doubt, prayer is the most effective antidote for vampirism. Prayer is neither a mechanical movement of the lips nor a record of easy repetition by the mind. It's vibration, energy, and power. The person who mobilizes his or her own energies in prayer performs deeds of indescribable significance. This type of psychic state unveils unknown powers, reveals our divine origin, and puts us in contact with higher sources. In this act, spirits in any form can emit rays of astonishing power. And anybody who cultivates prayer with the proper balance of sentiment gradually becomes a radiant point of divine energies. I found this so beautiful, and it's
Wow.
really nice to see how prayer is actually, as and we've talked about other resources here in the studies, a really, really, really important and sophisticated technology. This is really,
Yeah.
really pretty. So with this, we end chapter 6.
It's so nice to
S-
hear you.
nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to the chapter 70. A huge chapter, but lots of teachings. Spiritual help after they had watched the beautiful scene still inside the couple house. The chapter begins with Alexandre asking Andre if he has more free time. Once Alexandre would have a meeting later in order to give instruction to the incarnate brothers and sisters, and it would be nice if Andrea could attend. Andrea accepts the invitation, and when they leave the couple's house, the beautiful story. Those obsessing spirits were still waiting outside of the house. On the way, Andrea notes once again that have lots of disincarnated passing by. Most of them were in an inferior nature, and groups of light go to work also. Alexandre explained that most of the time our help is most effective at night when direct sunlight does not break down some resource of our cooperation. At this time, an elderly lady called Justina approached asking for help her son Antonio. He isn't doing well at all. Antonio is living a circle of low thoughts despite his good heart. Tonight he took so many worries to bed, his mental creation have turned into real pain. I tried to help him, but unfortunately his inner balance is so huge, his brain is at risk of fatal stroke, but he still needs a few more days on Earth. I think in 2 months I will indirectly obtain for him the solution to all the problems that have affected his family peace. Your authority, Alexandre, and your heart increased can help us. Realize the urgent Alexander explained that have no time to lose. At the Antonio's house, who apparently to be 70 years old, he seems to be on his deathbed. Andrea could clear identify the pre-agony phase in the physical spiritual expression. He was almost completely outside of his body with a hard breathing. Andrea could see everything that happened inside Antonio's body. A serious case of thrombosis is one of the brain arteries with an imminent stroke. Alexandre put all his attention on this perispiritual brain and say, Antonio, stay wake up. You must help us to help you. Antonio opened his spiritual eyes, understand a little bit the warning, put himself in a good enough state to cooperate on his own behalf. And Alexandre decided call mentally for the brother Francisco help group that couldn't be far. If in the few minutes 8 spirits, 4 brothers and 4 sisters come into room to help, Francisco suggests call the incarnate friend Afonso that might be quite helpful fluid donor. Francisco returned with the incarnate friend Afonso, put his both hands on the Antonio's forehead and start to pray. André tells us that Alexandre was functioning as true magnetizer, transferring fluids from Afonso to Antonio's body. Deeply astonished, André could see Antonio's perispiritual form slowly returning to his physical body, integrating cell by cell. After 25 minutes, the huge magnetized intervention ended and the clot was dissolved. Alexandre said that to Justina that these magnetic procedures won't last more than 150 days, almost 5 months. Don't forget to warn him via intuition about the care he should about his thoughts at night. Many people use their physical rest hours to create phantoms in thoughts. Most thought CVAs happen at night. If Antonio don't elevate his thoughts, he might disincarnate before 5 months. Justina thanks him a lot in tears of happiness. As Afonso removed his hand from the Antonio's forehead, he opened his physical eyes, screaming, "Help, help, help!" Alexander commented that usually when our incarnate brothers call for help, our work uh, of assistance is already finished. It's so funny. Back on the street, Francisco explained to André that their activities are interlinked with Nosso Lar instructors and they are specialized in the serious ill and dying people cases that are hard at night. During the day, the sun's rays destroy most of the environmental creation of the will. But at night, the moon's magnetism can increase the create of all types of thoughts, good or bad. As long as they are enjoy excellent physical health, incarnates rarely understand great lessons, but on their deathbed, people are gentle and more human. Disease and pain is slowing down the heavy hours of indifference and pride. Then greater understanding becomes possible. Is the end of the chapter 7. Do you want to comment?
Sure. But it like you, the key is when we that sleep, to not create those thoughts right before we go to bed, because that was the issue here, is right before he was creating all these anxious thoughts. And so trying our best, and it could be a practice. It might not be easy because some days are very easygoing, and then there are others are just so hard. But to find a compromise sometime, just to
Yeah.
detach and just make that effort, because it makes a huge difference. Because even in the previous chapter that everything was happening at night, we see again it's that anxiety, that mental emanation, that if it's not a little bit higher as best as we can, it can change completely the trajectory of our night. So
Yeah,
mhm,
you have to practice of meditation before go bed. Yeah. Listen, you pray, an example.
for sure,
So,
yes.
chapter 8 on the plane of dreams. Alexander explained to Francisco about the meeting. He will give basic work instruction for the incarnate brothers and sisters in order to help them if some problem is found in mediumship and psychism ability. Francisco said that he'll bring to the meeting some co-workers who frequently work with them. Alexandre explained to André that the core of incarnate students has become quite large. However, they are lacking in some essential qualities for using their full potentials. So we must bring them more in constructive knowledge using the hours of physical sleep. There are over 300 members at our study center, but only 32 have been able to overcome the lowest physiological sensation in order to assimilate our structure. Wow. However, some of them break their appointment by answering the worldly seduction. Alexandre explained to André that the sensorial capacity of the incarnates out of their bodies is reduced to remember all the instructions. However, spirit has total recall and will save inside all the teachings, intensifying and improving them according to their own evolution state. Everyone of good will can keep more memory even during the day, although they are a little bit unsure about its source, to help others and overcome the all imperfections. When the students wake up after the meeting, they experience relief, rest, hope, and new education values. Their thoughts become clear, the sentiments more uplifted, and their praise more respectful and productive. They arrive at the modest building where they meet will take place. Alexander explained that this place is a familiar spiritist institution dedicated to serving. The spirit of the evangelical family is alive in this place of Christian love that the Spiritism built the, with the help of the missionary sister of the Christ. Here, we can carry out our work more efficient. A family, sorry, a family environment improve our instructions for the incarnate fellow spirits. Alexandre comments that we mustn't forget the great lessons by Jesus were given in family settings. The first visible Christian institution was Peter's home in Capernaum. Every physical workplace is guided by love functions as a lighthouse. Minutes before the meeting, Alexandre asked some friends if everyone is ready, and they answered that are missing two, Vieira and Marcondes. Alexandre said that they need to start at 2 a.m. because they have to finish the work at 4 a.m. And Alexandre recommend to assistant Sertório go to check what's going on. Alexandre also recommends Sertório if Vieira and Marcondes are under the lower influence of criminals, leave them where they are. Alexandre allows André go along with Sertório. On the way, Sertório explained to André that incarnates have no idea of the work that they do during physical sleep. If humans have more spiritual preparation, they would make great realization in psychic area. In consciousness, most use their nighttime rest in search of lower desires, hide them during the day, open their own defense due to the lack of spiritual consciousness. André and Sertório reach at Vieira's home. Vieira, an elderly man, was sleeping in his and his spiritual body was most disconnected from physical body. Vieira was shocked and in deep distress. Next to him, a dark spirit making strange gestures. Sertório commented that Vieira suffered a huge nightmare and that probably has attracted this dark spirit who is scaring him. Sertório asked the dark spirit if he was relative of the man who is sleeping. The dark spirit answered him, saying, "No, he's just an old friend." And Vieira called him with memories and accusing him of wrong that they didn't make, and this upset him a lot. He has been suffering since his death, and he didn't expect such behavior from Vieira because of the affection they have between their families. I always believe in him. That's my surprise, and I decided to wait him in order to give me explanation. But seems like he doesn't wait to listen to me. Sertório understand that it would be in vain give any uplifted teachings to their spirit, and said to André that once Vieira made possible this visitor presence, remove him is not a tax compatible with his present position, but we can't help Vieira, but he can help Vieira by waking him up. Sertório shouted his name loudly, and Vieira woke up confused, saying, what's a terrible nightmare with Barbosa ghost?" Vieira didn't see André, Sertório, neither the dark spirit, even though Vieira was still asking himself what he might have eaten for dinner, try to escape the reality. André and Sertório went to 5 Marcondes. 2 minutes later, in his apartment, the scene was more upsetting and embarrassing. Marcondes was the most disconnected from his physical body, with three families' spirits from lower zones of darkness in the compromised posture with mocking expression on their face. Since suddenly Marconi couldn't hide his surprise, shamed, he tried hard to give some explanation, saying that he doesn't know how to explain this. At this embarrassing scene, those three family dark spirits approached me to calm Sertório, saying things like, "You can't take Marconis from us. Marconis is weak. We also have a cross of pleasures. Marconis won't leave." So André was about to say something in order to clarify the situation when Sertório stopped him. And contain yourself, André. 1 minute of give attention to provocation from lower planes can cause us a lose of a century. Without hesitation, they return to street. Sertório said that Marconis must remember this situation tomorrow as unpleasant memories, and these memories will last a long time, improve his repugnance by evil, and they need to report to Alexander what's really going on. Is the end of chapter 8. So lots of teachings.
Absolutely. And just the choices that the spirits made, one of them was woken up and not the other. So obviously, we
Yeah.
need to trust the process, you know. But it's very interesting the way, I think, the way he woke him up. Uh, like the names for me are so difficult to say. Okay, but the way he like woke him up, I thought that was absolutely unbelievable. It's like, oh my god, interesting. All right, good, really good. Ooh. Are we ready for the next ones?
Yeah, go ahead.
And ours are the second 9 and 10. They're complementary of each other, so. But the cool thing about chapter 9, we begin John and Chris mentioned Alexandre. So chapter 9, it's interesting because the title is mediumship and phenomena. And so it does talk about mediumship, but it's like Andre shares so much to us about Alexander. So we can't help it but to say we can probably learn through Alexander's character a lot of the ways to be as vehicles or to be like the mediums and stuff. And I think as we study the chapter, it'll make sense, right? Because when we think about it, um, the first thing that we know is Alexandro is just this amazing light. Not only have we been following him in these previous chapters, but in this particular chapter, he is really the spokesperson. And Andre himself says that when he talks, he is very wise, he's humble, he's prudent, loyal, honest, and a light. And in this chapter, Alexandro takes that teacher role and he's teaching a lesson, and as a teacher, he's absolutely this educator. He's phenomenal. Says that he improvises the lessons, but not because he's not prepared, actually because he waits for the students to kind of speak out, okay, this is what's on our mind. And so it's a very student centered lesson that he has. And I think that's phenomenal because even when he prays, Andre always says it's not about him. It's always about the others. And so that's a beautiful thing. And thinking about this chapter, the students request, can you talk about mediumship, right? So as he's talking, this nonverbal language is incredible. Several times he's talking, he pauses. It says that he would gaze at the students, meaning he's engaged. He has that eye contact with them, and he would even send like magnetizing thoughts. Like he would send good thoughts. So that connection is critical. And so when we think he's already going to talk about magnetism, I mean, mediumship, right? We can already tell that our character is very, very important. And we know in the mediums book, before we get to that, that it's really to build our morals, right? And part of it is that character. And I think Alexandro here is absolutely beautiful. There are three times that Andre shares about his ability to transform. So in page 98, 103, and 109, he says something really beautiful. And when he transformed, he describes him the same way: a radiating light, something absorbing him, a kindness, an unpretentious ascendancy. I couldn't almost pronounce that. Blah, blah, blah. It says he saw something in the middle of his chest, right? Sublime light, this indigo light, a light out of the rays. His hair resembled threads of sunlight with a sapphire like sheen. His gaze had become more sublime and deeper. And then the last time we see him transform, he describes him like it was beyond anything. I mean, his remains turned white as snow. His brow emitted an intense light. He was so brilliant. It was so strange. I mean, seeing him transform three times within that one meeting, he says that everybody was just weeping and enjoying. And so, again, to think he doesn't even have to talk about mediumship and that phenomena, but seeing where he's at, right? Because in order for us to reach to that, there has to be a lot of this inner work, right? So it was that inner transformation. And I thought that word transform, and that's what it is. So many of us, as he does talk about, people want to be in that phenomenon, want to seek, and they are so curious. Um, but even just through those transformations, it's us. The transformation is inside, and he didn't even have to say a word. So that was beautiful. The next thing that is absolutely amazing is that Alexander respects the students, right? Not only in the examples of listening to them, but giving them the autonomy of what they want to learn. So it's very important if someone really wants to discipline themselves to this idea, oh, the mediumship, that respect of, okay, we have to like give of ourselves and develop those values, especially like if we are, it's a leadership position. And I feel like Alexander was always the servant, right? Always respecting, putting others in front of him. He also prays, I know John's chapter 6, right? The that like he says, like that's the tool, right? A powerful tool. He starts the meeting with a prayer and he ends with a prayer. So that connection that he has with God, the divinity, the divine, is very, very important. And he's very passionate. He's such a passionate teacher. I kind of like, I read it the one time, first time, I was like, oh my gosh, he's hardcore. Like, wow. But then I thought, wait a minute, relax. Think about this. He is such a kind and compassionate person that even though you are feeling something there, right? Um, it would be like more of a person that he's like a strong figure. Have you ever had those teachers that you can take anything to that teacher's gonna tell you something like they just have the answer, and if they don't have it, they will look for it. That's him. That's that kind of passion. So even though maybe might hear his lecture be like, oh my gosh, like he's not. He's actually very gentle, very kind, very compassionate. He says a lot of things, but we're only going to say a couple that are very, very important as you are building this mediumship, right? And he makes a point that I think is absolutely beautiful, which is says, mediumship is the means of communications, as Jesus himself tells us, I am the door, right? So without Christ, he says, mediumship is simply a means of communicating, nothing more. So that's the key component. That's the bottom lesson to all the things that he says. It's to remember that communication, right? To remember about faith, and faith is not something that it happens like overnight. It's something that you kind of have to build. Anytime you hear the word building, we know it's going to take there's structure, it's going to take time, tools, and etc. The second lesson he says, as we're trying to develop these perceptions, is to keep the thoughts right and say a lot of people think that it's all about the manifestations and clairvoyance and all of that. But how can we want to see all of that, I say authentically, if we haven't built ourselves to hear better, to serve, to do the daily work? So it's very important to let it flow naturally. I think the Medium's book does go, the spirits remind us that it's like, it's something that happens. As long as we're working the moral aspect, the mediumship comes in. Let me go for another one because I'm already running out of time. It's a huge chapter, guys. The other one he talks about life. It's like the spiritual anthropological phylogenic trees that he's talking about. He says, remember, you think there's two races, us on the spiritual realm and you guys on earth, but actually we're one. We are united. So when we see this evolution, we're all connected, right? It changes things because imagine us as in the next chapter, they're doing an actual mediumistic meeting. You see this disconnect, which he's trying to teach us. So that's why it's so important to see ourselves in this spiritual phylogenic tree of evolution kind of mentality. So he says a lot of things. I really, really recommend someone if you really want to see. He says a lot of things about mediumship, but it's always about the love, the respect, the kindness, working hard, discipline, prayer, and not taking it, oh, I'm curious like a child. It's very serious. It's something that um, it's a and I have to say this is one of the first times I actually talk about mediumship because I'm studying it little by little since I'm relatively new to spiritism. But it seems to me it's a tool to help and to not stay tied up to, oh, I want to be this medium like ostentatious. I think that's the word. There's different kinds of mediumship, and to be patient and do not rush the process. Everything will come. That's kind of like what he said in a nutshell. The next chapter, guys, and I'm going really fast because of a lot of pages. It's entitled Materialization. So now he gives us a lesson and we fall in love with Alexandra even more, right? And then we move on. And he's like, all right, Andre, are you ready? And they're supposed to do a mentor. Oh, first, do you have anything to say? I just
No,
keep.
no, go ahead, go ahead. So many pages.
Oh my god! Today I was taking a class. The teacher was like, "Everybody, let's talk. Just talk." I said, "Are you sure you're gonna say that? Because okay, you're the best." All right, the last chapter, it really is about the kind of meeting. So I don't know. Okay, there's steps that happen. So again, this happens at a spiritual center, and he's given us some steps of kind of what happens. It's very sci-fi if it's the first time that we're exposed to this, but when we read it again and we talk about it and we hear ourselves, it starts to make a little bit of sense. Like you start to connect the dots from that perspective, right? So the first thing he talks about, we need like a spiritual insulation to the room. So let's imagine ourselves with Andre. Okay, they're getting the room ready. So they have a process. First, insulation, because if you're gonna do a materialization, right? You don't want to have those vibrations. It needs to be very, very pure. And I saw that, wow, this is incredible, right? The second thing that needs to happen is now it's almost like the way I imagined it. I don't know if you guys like it's not incense, but like imagine people that do like sage or the incense the room. You have to kind of walk through the room. Some people put like what is it, like holy water? People have all sorts of things. It's not that it's talking about, but it's the idea that after they put like an insulation on the wall, now they're gonna clarify the air. So they're actually putting like spiritual humidifiers uh, and going in with this energy. And Andre finds this very funny because he asks, "Are they like ancient priests that are like cleaning?" Because he sees them, and I can imagine, And the answer that Alexandra says, "No, they're not hierophants making gestures, right? Like they're not like back in the day." They're just doing what they have to do. So Andre is very, very funny. And then he talks about how there needs to be a condensation of oxygen throughout the house. And he explains a lot of the details of the atmosphere, which we know in several books, we know, and especially Andre, about our atmosphere, the thoughts, the vibrations, everything needs to be clear. They're just cleaning it. And so every time we take a fresh air, I think with this, I'm like, okay, just pray because there's a lot of stuff that we don't see yet. We don't have the tools, but they're there. So that's the idea here. So after they clean, then they bring in the medium. So that was what's supposed to happen, right? So they can start doing the materialization. But um, we had an issue here. So let me see. We need to, okay. Once they bring in the person, they say they start like cleansing the the body. They do this process first with the digestive system. So he describes in great detail. There's no way if someone, if you really had to read this biochemistry, um, that's happening. Like the organs change as they're cleansed. It's like they're working even harder but softer at the same time. After they do the digestive system, then they go to the nervous system. So they're like even cleansing the body, um, to undo of all the residues. So it says here the nutrition, circulation, metabolism, and protoplasmic action so that the physiological equilibrium is maintained. So that's kind of like the process that was supposed to happen. And then the spirits, they do a pass. And then finally the spirits get ready. And even when they get ready, there's a process because there's like a connection. But in this particular meeting, it didn't quite go as planned because one of those members had something to drink, and he said because that his body was in that state, it was very difficult. So this is science. This is not a social issue or anything because if we read this from that science angle, we know that they're cleansing that body, right? So it needs to be fresh, it needs to be hydrated. And when a body is under, when a person or they drink, the biochemistry is very interesting. It actually takes two processes for the body to break down, like two metabolic pathways. So the very first one, and it does well, but it doesn't finish cleaning the toxins, so it has to cleanse it twice. In those two reactions, the cells become hydrated. And I think this is why, looking at this from a science perspective, it's very hard to be in a meeting with that because your body is cannot take this, right? And they, like they mentioned, we don't want to hurt the person. That's why hardly we have any materializations because it's a very, very it's a process that is very, very particular. We need like your body has to be very healthy. So that was very interesting, and eventually they do get to it. They were able to. Um, oh, but one of the things that Andre did say, which I thought was interesting, well, he doesn't look drunk, and they say appearances aren't everything. So we cannot trick the spirits, right? We can. So, and also, to be um to be careful, to be very careful. All right. The next thing, oh my gosh, my phone's the next thing, so they do it. It was beautiful, 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 beautiful. So here it is. So when they do the materialization, he describes almost this milky effluvium, like he does like this thing. I always see it like this, like a little flow, and then he touches his vocal cords right here. Okay, so he's using the energy, and he gets a hold. I can see almost like this, right? And so when this is happening, all of a sudden, Alexandre is able to talk through her, and it's just unbelievable. And just to remember, he just starts, dear friends, may the peace of Jesus be with you. And then he just leaves a beautiful, beautiful message because we need music, he says. We need music. And the power of music, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
to cleanse all of that. So it's very important. So once they leave the message, they just keep talking, and yeah, and then Dre learns a lesson. I think that's pretty much kind of the idea of it. So like I said, 9 and 10 they go hand in hand because the first one we get the theory that goes hand in hand with the medium's book, and then this chapter 11 we get an example of a materialization. So important. I mean, it's a lot of responsibility, I think, to be a medium. When we read about this, like, oh my God.
Oh, lots of thought teachings, and
Yes.
I think that the music, when they listen to the music, you have to connect with harmonics, electromagnetic waves, that you can resonate with our electromagnetic field, and you put in straight harmonic uh, resonance, that is, if we can assess our deep love and good things inside us,
Yeah.
music is a the great technology. It's a love technology.
Oh, yeah, I love that. It's a love thing. It really is.
Yes.
Yes. And we,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we know, I guess, the bottom line, and it changes the whole the whole energy. Because even if we're not doing
Yeah,
a realistic meeting, and even if it's just we're doing our God at home or something, we put that music, or we're just it's just amazing. We tune into it. There's
yeah. I remember Aniceto saying that there is no place, there is a state of mind, and music can
mm,
put in another state of mind in a few seconds.
beautiful.
So
Yeah,
so beautiful.
so beautiful. Wow. So
Yeah.
we did it.
So we did.
Thanks to the
Hi
mentor.
guys,
Wow.
I'm back here with you guys again. I was trying to keep up at the end. Um, this hearing you guys talk about. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hearing you guys talking about the music, and I do remember all those churches in Brazil where before listening to the speech, they sing, they try to connect with God through music. It's really pretty, and it's really a tradition here. Um, before we close the live, I want to thank you, my friends, for helping me, and apologize for not having participated that much today. And also clarify that this not turning my camera on situation is super, super exceptional. I thank you all again, and wish you guys a great, great, great night. Do you guys want to say something before we finish here?
Just thank you a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks,
Thank you.
Andre, for these.
Thank
This is a beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful book.
Yes, we're getting to those more sophisticated technology parts of the book, so we need to be very, very. We need to use our strength and our whole attention to get this book and to pass it around. It's
Yes.
getting a little tougher. Thank you guys so much. I'm
Thank
gonna
you. Good
close the
night.
live. Thank you guys
Thank
that
you.
are here with us till
See you
now.
next
Thank you
week.
guys so much.
Next week, guys.
Yes. See you
Bye.
guys next week. See Chris tomorrow. See you guys.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye bye.